We have another exclusive interview for you today on the LockedOn Giants podcast as Ross Tucker of Ross Tucker's Football Podcast joins me to talk New York Giants, Brian Daboll, and basically all things Giants. That's coming up next on the LockedOn Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Giant fans, I am pleased to be joined by Ross Tucker. He is a former NFL offensive lineman. He's also the host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, which he'll talk about a little later on in the program. And if you go to his website, rosstucker.com, you'll see he has a whole bunch of other podcasts under his Ross Tucker Media umbrella. So, Ross, very busy man. Appreciate you taking the time to come on with me here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
My pleasure, Patricia. Thank you so much for having me. Good time to come on a Giants podcast these days.
Indeed, 6-1. I mean, who'd have thunk it, right? So, Ross,
nobody, like literally nobody. I mean, I'm sure Brian Daboll would say that he thought they could do this, but I think in an honest moment, he'd probably say that this is even beyond his expectations. But that's one of the great things about sports and everything is that sometimes you get some momentum, you get going a little bit, the guys start to believe, and certainly that's what they're doing with Daboll right now.
Certainly, indeed. Now, Ross, I want to tap into your history as a player because we often hear about culture and how important it is to building a winning program and how it can also create a losing environment. From your perspective, how exactly does this whole concept of culture work as far as the direction a team takes?
It's a really, really good question. And I think it's a lot harder to put your finger on it than people realize. It's funny because I call college games for CBS, and every college coach you ever talk to talks about culture. They'll tell you how many of their guys could have left via the transfer portal, but they decided to stay. I mean, it's something that people really heavily emphasize. I think it's the attitude of everyone in the building. And it's the level of buy-in to what the organization is doing. And that absolutely starts with the head coach. And I think it's really important. And it's not easy to get. You know, I think there are some people in life, and this is probably any industry, right? There's some people that are their default is to believe you, to believe in what you're doing, and to give you the benefit of the doubt until proven otherwise. And then there are others, like that's how I would be, Patricia. Then there are others that are probably a little bit more skeptical. You kind of got to earn it. You got to prove it to me. That's like my wife, right? So I think that's natural that some people are a little bit more open and welcoming to something new or change, and others takes a little bit getting used to. And I think a lot of it, to be honest with you, has to do with how you start and whether or not they start to see some success from it early. I do think that's important. Although I say that, and in the same token, you know, I was on an 0-5 Washington team in 2001 with Marty Schottenheimer as a new head coach. And he just stayed the course. He didn't change anything, Patricia. We were playing against the Panthers. LeVar Arrington had a pick six. We won the game, and it was like a switch flipped. We won our next 5 games to get to 5-5. We finished the year 8-3 in our last 11. And it was almost like we just needed something positive to happen to get that momentum. But guys were buying into what he was saying. Same thing in 2004 in Buffalo with Mike Mularkey, another new first-year head coach then. We started out 0-4. And then we went 9-2 in our next 11. For Daboll, I think it's easiest and best when you start that way, when you get off to a good start, because then you get the buy-in and the belief from everyone right away. And I think that has been most noticeable for the Giants with just the way they've performed in these close games, right? I mean, I think there are probably some statistical analysts out there that would say they're kind of winning more than their fair share of close games. That will come back. There will be a little bit of regression to the mean. They won't continue at this rate. But I think there are others that believe that if you're a team that doesn't beat yourself late in games and makes the one or two critical plays and believes you're going to make those plays, that those teams have a tendency to win more than their fair share. I think that's what the Giants are doing right now. They're winning more than their fair share of close games because they now expect to win those close games late, where I don't think that was the case under the last couple of head coaches. And so I don't know if that's culture or just because they've won a couple of them and now they believe, but that's probably the biggest difference now is when they're in those close games late, they're not hoping they're going to win. They're expecting they're going to win.
You know, we hear about coaching all the time and how important it is. And if you look at the Giants, and they've gotten probably the most out of some guys that, you know, have been floating around the league looking for a home. What is it about coaching and that you see Daboll and his staff doing maybe a little differently to get as much out of these guys as they have?
Well, a couple things. First of all, they have, without question, a terrific staff, right? And it's funny because I was actually, when I was in New England, Patricia, in 05 and 06, Daboll was the tight end coach. And he's clearly, the thing that I think is the wildest thing about the Giants' run so far is you look at them offensively and their receivers really haven't done much. They've been injured. They've been in and out of the lineup. I mean, Daniel Jones isn't exactly throwing to the greatest receivers out there right now. And then the offensive line hasn't been that great either. Now, I think they are a little bit better getting guys like Feliciano, Glowinski. Those are tough, hard-nosed culture guys, right? They're never going to go to a Pro Bowl, but they're not going to be the reason why the team loses. They're going to block the right guy. They're going to block to the echo of the whistle to the best of their ability. Obviously, Evan Neal has struggled at right tackle even before the injury. So that's been an issue, which is why what Daniel Jones has done has been so impressive to me. I mean, I talked about this just this past week with Greg Cosell from NFL Films on the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. He joins me every Thursday, and he just talked about how well Daniel Jones is playing on third down, which is really hard to do when you've got the issues they've had at receiver and then on the offensive line. I think he's been decisive with where he wants to go with the football and driving in there. And then obviously, I think the two things Daboll has done that have really jumped out to me, three things. Take that back, three things. Number one, the creativity. I mean, I think about some of the creativity down near the goal line, like the London game against Green Bay, and some of the things they did with the tight ends. He's also done a terrific job of recognizing that Saquon Barkley is by far their most explosive, talented offensive player and trying to utilize him, trying to get him the ball in different ways, which I think Wildcat in the passing game, screened as a runner, very, very smart. And then I think he's kind of embraced Daniel Jones' athleticism and realizing that that's a big part of who Daniel Jones is. Obviously, he utilized that quite a bit against the Jaguars. He can run. He's fast. I mean, I was at the game against the Eagles where he tripped over his face and fell flat on his face, but he's athletic. So I think schematically on offense, though, that's what's jumped out to me. Overcoming some of the deficiencies they have at O-line and receiver, and then also those three things in terms of creativity, Daniel Jones' legs, and feeding the beast that is Saquon Barkley. Defensively, Wink Martindale is just really good. I mean, really good, and has been. I think Baltimore misses him. They haven't been as good on the defensive side of the ball in Baltimore without him. And the Giants, even with some guys banged up over there, have been very, very effective on the defensive side of the ball.
Hey, small business owners, if you're looking for the right people to help your small business fire on all cylinders, check out LinkedIn Jobs. Post a free job listing in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to let everybody know that you're hiring. Over 40 million job seekers visit the LinkedIn Jobs site every week and are just waiting to find opportunities with employers like your business. With LinkedIn Jobs, simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so that you can quickly prioritize whom you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. So go ahead, post your job for free today at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Hey, fellas, if you're looking for something stylish and comfortable in your pants or shorts, you need to check out the Bird Dogs line. I recently got a pair of their shorts and sweatpants for my husband, and they have quickly become his favorite attire thanks to the fit, quality, and most of all, comfort. No matter what he's doing, whether it be yard work, working out, or just lounging around the house, wearing bird dog pants or shorts have become his go-to attire. They're like wearing a second skin. Bird dog joggers are higher quality than Lululemon and $20 less. And did I mention that they're the most comfortable pants and shorts that my husband has ever worn? If you're looking to combine style with comfort, affordability, and durability, go to birddogs.com today. Enter the promo code Locked On, and they'll throw in a free Bird Dogs rope hat. That's birddogs.com, promo code Locked On, to get a free Bird Dogs rope hat with your order of any Bird Dogs sweatpants, joggers, or shorts. Bird Dogs, the most comfortable shorts, pants, and sweatpants with built-in liners. That website again is birddogs.com, and that promo code for your free Bird Dogs rope hat is Locked On. Hey, Giant fans, thanks for making the Locked On Giants podcast your first listen every day. For your second listen today, be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today is available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. You mentioned Brian Daboll was on the Patriots staff when you were a player. I know he wasn't your position coach, but I'm sure you had interactions with him here and there. How, based on what you know of him then versus what you've seen of him now, how has he matured as a person and as a head coach? Well, as a coach in general.
Yeah, I don't know how much he's matured as a person in the sense that I saw him smoking the cigar after the game. He's got some swag to him, Patricia. He's got, and I think that resonates with the players too. I think they like that. I think they like that he's got that confidence and that swagger, and he wants, he's a Buffalo guy, I believe, a Buffalo kid. And I think he wants the players to have that same level of swagger, that same level of confidence that he projects. I think that's a big part of it. The thing that's interesting to me about him is it doesn't feel like he comes from the Belichick tree at all. All those other guys were all like robots when they went to new places. The Manginis and Josh McDaniels and Joe Judge, who you had to deal with. I don't know. You tell me, Patricia. I'm going to ask you a question on your own show, but I don't know what he's like at press conferences. Maybe he's totally tight-lipped or whatever, but it feels like there's just a different aura around him than there was with Joe Judge.
I think that's definitely fair. We just actually had a call with him about a half hour before you and I started taping this show. And, what he doesn't want to tell you, he won't. For example, questions on injuries. What does Evan Neal have? he has a knee. Well, duh, we know he has a knee, but what exactly does he have? And he doesn't want to talk about it. But if you ask him about how a player has done or something like that, you could always tell when you're going to get a good answer from him because he always starts off, yeah, and you can see the face lights up and everything. But he's very laid back, and you're right, he's very likable. Not that the other coaches weren't likable, not that Joe Judge wasn't likable, but Brian Daboll is the type of guy who you kind of want to sit down and have at a bar and have a beer with.
Exactly. And he's always been that way. He was that way as the tight end coach. He's been that way since I've been calling games and seen him before the game on the field, doing games for Westwood One or whatever. And I think that has resonated with the players. He's not going to put the team in a bad position by giving away information that he thinks could be valuable to the opponent. But you can do that and still give good answers to other questions and still not make the media feel like a bunch of jerks.
And he's also very upfront and transparent with his players. Some coaches say they're going to do it and they don't. So that's another thing I think that the locker room has embraced with him. Ross, you mentioned the defense and Wink Martindale. What is it about that style of defense that he runs that makes it such a fit for what New York has in terms of talent and what they want to be?
Well, he believes in being aggressive. And I've never once heard a player on defense that doesn't want to be aggressive, right? Like they want to be trying to penetrate. They want to be trying to get pressure on the quarterback, hits on the quarterback. I don't think he's been as reckless with it as he was in Baltimore. At times, I thought he was a little bit reckless with it. And perhaps, I don't know the right word for this, but taking advantage isn't the right word. But the Ravens, I think he believed had really good corners. And it was almost like Patricia, he would bring the house all the time because of that. And they got burned a lot as a result, especially last year, which I think is one of the reasons why he moved on. He's figured out with the corners they have in New York how to still be aggressive and how to have some guys come free without putting your corners in a position where they could really look bad and really put him in a bad spot. I think he's stayed aggressive without being unsound with some of his aggression. Like I thought at times he got to be a little bit in Baltimore.
Hey, Giant fans, playing daily fantasy based on player projections has never been easier when you visit prizepicks.com. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they go on to score more or less than their prize picks projection, you will win up to 10 times the amount of your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks is currently operational in over 30 states and in Canada and offers projections on every sport. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less, and Prize Picks offers safe and fast withdrawals. Download the prizepicks.com app today or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. Don't forget that promo code is locked on. Enter that at sign up at prizepicks.com. Couple more for you, Ross, just real quick. The Giants at 6-1, where can they get better given what they have? I mean, obviously they're not going to go out and find all new receivers, offensive line. Basically the roster is what they have, what it is. The salary cap is not very, healthy. There might be some trades that who knows. I don't think there will be. So what can this team do better moving forward to ensure that they stay on the path that they're on?
Good question. I think you'll probably, at some point in this decade, I think Kadarius Toney will be healthy and available to play in a game at some point this decade. I don't know if it's this year, but at some point this decade, I do think you'll see them find a way to utilize Wan'Dale Robinson more. They drafted him in the second round for a reason. He's a very explosive kid that I think they want to take advantage of. So I do think they'll get him involved a little bit more. I am worried about some of these injuries now. I think the Bellinger one is a significant one because they really liked what he was doing. That's a scary injury, by the way. Like,
Reminded
that's
me of
not.
Brian Williams from a few years ago, way back when. Remember Brian Williams?
No, what happened? I don't remember that.
In training camp, he got poked in the eye and he developed double vision. He was never the same. I think it was a career ender. And that's what immediately popped into my head when I saw the Bellinger injury. I said, oh God, I hope that's not the case for this kid.
Man, I agree. I don't like this idea of him having to have surgery. I actually didn't see the injury. I just heard about it. But for it to be forceful enough to fracture his eye socket, I mean, that's hard to have happen. That's rare. Although I guess it's surprising it doesn't happen more often. So I think Bellinger, with their receiver issues, is going to be a big part of what they were doing. And so now you wonder how much that hurts them and how they overcome that. But I don't know. I'd like to think that Jones and the receivers will click a little bit more as the season goes on. But that's probably about it, to be honest with you, Patricia. I mean, I think this is going to be their formula for winning. Heavy Saquon, heavy Daniel Jones legs, and a lot of Wink Martindale's defense.
Yeah, and hopefully they can keep it up because Giant fans are certainly rejuvenated by what this coaching staff and this team has done. All right, now, Ross, I want to ask you about your podcast, the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Those folks who maybe aren't familiar about it, tell us a little bit about the format, what you do, how often it runs, and so forth.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Patricia. So it's the Ross Tucker Football Podcast is daily, Monday through Friday, recorded first thing in the morning. It's always 30 minutes or less. It's basically getting everybody up to date on everything going on around the NFL from a player's perspective. We have a guest like this week. We have Ed McCaffrey talking about his son, Christian, and Greg Cosell. I'll give my power rankings. But what's cool is the year after I started that, I started a fantasy podcast, the Fantasy Feast, then a betting podcast, the Even Money podcast. So I've got a bunch of different ones. The College Draft podcast with Emory Hunt, who you probably know because he covers the Giants from time to time. So I got a bunch of podcasts. It's a football life. I love it. If you're into betting or fantasy football or even just football, check out any of them. Fantasy Feast, Even Money, College Draft with Emory Hunt, who loves referencing the Giants, and, of course, the Ross Tucker Football Podcast.
Yes, and, of course, Emory Hunt has been on the show before, and I also saw you have one with Andrew Brandt. Is that still
Yeah,
known?
Andrew hosts the Business of Sports podcast on my network as well. So really cool, really interesting, different perspective than I can provide, certainly.
And y'all can find that at rosstucker.com. All the podcasts are listed there. Just click on the one you want to hear and it'll take you right to the
Yeah, and honestly,
pages.
wherever podcasts are found, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, they're all the same place. However you're listening to this, you can listen to it there. If you're watching us on YouTube, it's youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. I do the Eagles preseason games on TV and pregame on the radio. Very exciting times right now in the NFC East, to say the least. It's unbelievable. I was not expecting this.
No, I don't think anybody was. For years, it was the NFC least. And now all of a sudden, it's like, wow, what happened? Dallas, the Eagles, the Giants, Washington's still struggling. But, what a turnaround for the division.
It's been crazy. Yeah, nobody expected this at all. And it's probably making the Eagles fans a little bit nervous, but they got a really good team. So let's see if I think the division has a great chance to get 3 in the playoffs, which would be great.
Oh, that would be so awesome. If the Giants could get in, I know a lot of fans would jump for joy. I know I would be happy after
4 more wins, they're going. 3 more, they might be going, but 4 more wins, they're going. They got to win 4 of the next 10 games. Man, I'd be surprised if that doesn't happen.
I think I would be too. And what great times for the Giants, the land of the Giants, after almost a decade of lousy football. So, Ross, this was really great. I appreciate you coming on with me, telling us about your podcast. I know I listen to it here, when time permits. I see the tweets all the time. Folks, check him out. It's rosstucker.com, and he's got a bunch of different podcasts. No matter what your interest is, you'll find something about football to satisfy it. For Ross Tucker, I'm Patricia Traina. Thank you, Giant fans, for making the LockedOn Giants podcast your first listen of the day, or if watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day.